Now, while Jeb is on his way to the Mun, Val has better things to do with her time. In this case, Cats have reviewed the data from the first flight of the vehicle, and it has come back as airworthy. Not that we didn't think otherwise. And now Cats want Val to take the craft out and just scout the emergency airstrip, which is on an island just off the coast, just beyond the KSC, because it may be necessary. In other words, the agency needs you to check out the emergency airstrip just in case. In order to do that, we're going to take a crew report just above the emergency airstrip. We need one crew member who must be a pilot. We need a Weasley basic jet engine, well, we know we've got one of those on our first aircraft, and we need to get a look at this emergency airstrip, which means flying below 1 kilometre at speeds of less than 150 metres per second, otherwise we won't get a decent photo. We need to be at the emergency airstrip, obviously, and we need to collect the science. That is the crew report. And of course, it wouldn't be a decent flight unless we get back to the runway. So Val, let's go and get into the spaceplane hangar and bring out your first aircraft. For those of you who haven't seen Val's aircraft, this is it. It is a rather natty looking single-seater. It is crammed with scientific instruments and fixed wheels. It also has the addition of 2 parachutes because Val is not yet an expert pilot and therefore may have to make an emergency landing. So with that said, let's get on out to the rather rugged runway, shall we call it, and get on over to the emergency airstrip and check it out. Val is already in the pilot's seat, ready to rumble down the airstrip. So the brakes are currently on. Let's stage to ignite our jet engine. Let it rev up. Throttle up. Take off the brakes. And let's head on out. We are going to have to upgrade this runway very soon. But fortunately, this little aircraft has a lot of lift, so it gets off really quickly. Let's throttle back and head on out to that marker, the Waypoint Manager marker. This is a mod that you can download and will give you markers to locations in normal view mode. So if we click on the marker and activate navigation, we will have some basic details about our distance and ETA. So let's just maneuver over. Let's get the SAS on, make it a little bit easier. Now we have a lot of conditions to meet in order to satisfy our goals. So let's get our contract open and bring down this whole load of detail. We obviously have a pilot and we have a jet engine. We need to get a look at the emergency airstrip by being on Kerbin and flying, which we clearly are. We need to be below 1,000 metres. So we need to bear that in mind as we approach. And we need to be at speed of less than 150 metres per second. So we are neither of those right now. But once we get there, we need to be close and do a crew report whilst we are close. And then we need to get back to the runway, that rather rickety looking runway. So let's get ready. And what I'm going to do is turn across our target and come at an angle more along the emergency airstrip itself. Now we're pretty low as it is, so we're pretty well within our altitude window, which is anything up to 1 kilometre above the terrain. Now with contract configurator you can specify terrain altitude or absolute altitude. I've chosen terrain altitude in this case. So let's start turning in. I think we can reduce throttle and then use the marker on the nav ball to line ourselves up with our target. There we go. And speed is a little bit high, so let's drop our throttle a little bit more. There we go. down to, there we go, 150. There we go. So we are now at the right vessel state. We now just need to be within a kilometre of the runway itself and take our crew report. So let's slow right down. We want plenty of time to take our crew report. We've got 35 seconds to go. We're 4 kilometres away now. We're still at the correct vessel state. We just have to be near the airstrip. So we're bang on target. Coming in over the airstrip. Still a bit of a rickety airstrip, but we're only going to be using it in an emergency. So watch for this to go green. There we go. We can now take our crew report. There we go. Crew report for 3.5 science. We've taken our crew report, so we are now safely. We are now ready and able, without crashing, to go back to the main KSC runway and retrieve our science. In this case, a photo of the state of that runway. The tower and the buildings look okay, but that runway could do with a bit of repair, as could ours at KSC, so we shouldn't laugh. Now this is of course the hardest part, getting back to KSC and landing safely, but actually it's a little bit easier from the east, because you can use the currents, the natural currents that generate these waves in this direction, to help you line yourself up with the KSC runway, which is just here. So let's do that. Let's get throttled up, and let's get back to the runway. So it's going to take a little bit of manoeuvring. Here we go. We don't want to come in right on the point here, otherwise we'll have to turn at the last second. So let's aim for somewhere out here and then turn in. So we want to be along one of these currents just here. Don't want to gain too much height. So you can just see the runway here. We missed the runway the first time, so let's see if we can do a better job of it. We have plenty of time before the MUN flyby 1 arrives at its destination, so we've got plenty of time. So let's start turning in, and there we go, along this current here. So let's reduce the throttle, start losing some speed, and start lining ourselves up. There we go. A little bit across. Probably want to be on this current just over here. There we go. Nicely lined up. Make sure we are nice and level, not that the runway is, and see if we can do a better job of it this time. Now if we don't, we do have our parachutes. We have 2 parachutes here on the top and 1 underneath as our aero braking parachute. So that should help. I think we're a little bit off to the right, so let's just bring ourselves back. Bring ourselves over a little bit to the left. There we go. $155 is a little bit quick, so let's bring the throttle right down, get down as low an airspeed as we can manage, drifting a little bit off to the right, to the left. So let's bring it back. There we go, a little bit off to the left. Given the state of the runway, landing on the grasslands might be a lot easier. Let's not try to land across the runway. That would not be good. So let's bring our speed right down. Here we go, we're pretty well lined up. And there we go. So let's get our brake parachute. I think that worked pretty well, Val. Pretty well. Let's get our brakes on. Kill the engine completely. That was absolutely perfect, Val. Given the state of the runway, that was absolutely brilliant. Well done. And we've completed the scout, the emergency airstrip mission absolutely flawlessly. So let's get that science back into the CATS Corporation and then go and see what Jeb is doing. Well, it's been 5 hours since we left Val back at the runway, and we are about to appear in the sphere of influence of the Mun. So we are very, very close to being able to complete our second flyby mission. So there we go. We are now in the influence of the Mun, just barely in the influence of the Mun, so we can start doing some experiments. So let's see what the experiments are that are available. We can do a temperature scan. Measuring the temperature of space appears to be quite impossible, as there is no matter around it to be either hot or cold, except the spacecraft and the thermometer itself. This is probably going to give R&D guys something to think about for quite a while. So that's 16 science, so we will keep that. We can do an orbital telescope observation. So let's just check out our orbital telescope, which is one of these modules. Let's guess it's one of these top modules. So let's click on orbital telescope observation. There we go. It's in the top module right here. There we go. Doing the observation now. We get 12 science for that. So yeah, lots of craters. We knew that. So let's keep that data. And we can toggle these doors close. So let's toggle the shutter. Let's watch that close back in. Just barely squeezes into its compartment, but nevertheless it works. Let's do one of our 2 mystery goo observations. There we are. See the component open right there. So we are in space high over the Mun, and we briefly consider filling one of those canyons with the goo, but not from here. So let's take 20 science and keep that data. Now we can do a materials study using the materials bay. There we go, that's this one down here. You can just see the materials bay in there. Your lab report is strategically written to convince KSC to let you actually land on the Mun. Yes, we would love to land on the Mun in a near future episode, but even this is 50 science, so we will have that 50 science. And while we remember, we will close up these compartments. So let's toggle the material bay's doors, and the same for the goo canister. So let's toggle those goo bay doors. And finally, let's get Jeb to actually do something. Let's get him to do a crew report. From this high up, the canyons look like scars across the Mun's face, which is appropriate considering how much the Mun has survived millennia after millennia. And for that, we only get 10 science. But it's 10 more than we had a few seconds ago, so let's keep that data. So, those are all of our experiments, and we have completed the mission to fly by the Mun. You do notice that KSC doesn't actually care if Jeb comes back. So with our configurator contract, we are going to have to take care to make sure that all of our pilots come back safely. But how is Jeb going to get back? Well, he is going to come back along this orange path just here once he leaves the sphere of influence of the Mun, and return to a periapsis of about 12 kilometers, which could prove a bit warm. So let's just warp to the end, the exit of sphere of influence, as the Mun disappears by serenely on its orbit. See the time warp automatically dropping down for us as we approach exit. So let's just move forward using the miracle of time warp just a little bit more as we pop out. There we go. We are now out. We are now back in the sphere of influence of Kerbin, and we are going to have fun returning this low into the atmosphere. So we do have a couple of options. We have our engine, and we can use our engine as a heat shield. Now, I have been chastised for not bringing back the majority of my craft that I could. So we are going to have to, well, see what we can do. We've got a little bit of fuel, so we can see if we can soften the fall back into the atmosphere to cushion the blow and perhaps save the engine and this fuel tank. But if we can't, we can jettison it and use the heat shield that is in here to soften the blow instead. So let us get back to the map view and let us start approaching Kerbin. So let's get the miracle of time warp to work for us. Here we go. There's the Mun passing away along its orbit, and here we are coming in towards our periapsis. Now we're going to be accelerating, so let's reduce time warp as we come in, otherwise we could go whizzing a straight past. So we are at what's that, 100? So we come in now, just see the tracking center there. So we come down to 50 time warp, so we're going to be completely on the wrong side of the planet for KSCs. We're not going to get much of a reward for recovering the parts given how far we are away, so my estimating how far we would be away hasn't worked particularly well. But one thing I did want to check is how much electricity we have, and all those batteries we crammed on. We've got about a third of our electricity left, even though we have spent a good few days in our mission. We've spent just over 2 days on that mission, and that's used up about 2/3 of our battery power. So it gives us a good idea of how much battery power we will need for future missions. So as we start to head into the atmosphere, I think it's about time we turned retrograde. So let's get ourselves let's start concentrating on the direction we're supposed to be going in. Oh dear, poor Jeb, poor Jeb. Come on, I don't think we're going to make it. Poor Jeb, oh dear. I think we are going to have to write this one off as the temperature of the command pod rises. Oh dear, Jeb. I think you may or may not survive. Temperature of these components is going up very, very quickly. We are now coming into the thickest part of the atmosphere, and no matter what I do, I can't turn you retrograde. Let's see if we can get the SAS to bring us around retrograde. Nope, I think our drag across the vehicle. Oh dear. So much for Val making a perfect landing. Oh dear, as we make an absolutely disastrous one with Jeb. But we did survive. We did survive. Our lack of concentration, our hands off, didn't really work. But we made it. We made it through the atmosphere. We are now down to 13 kilometers. We are going to come hard down onto well, at least we're not going to do a belly flop into the ocean, which has been extremely painful in the past. We are going to try and land tail down onto whatever flats these are. These are grasslands, so we have a chance. So let's stage that away and see if we can save the capsule. So we see if we can save all of this valuable science that we collected. So I'm sorry, we aren't going to be recovering the engine and the fuel tank because toppling over onto the grasslands would probably have been the end for Jeb, and I wasn't going to risk it. I tell you what, that looks very, very scarred. Let's switch off the SAS and just let this settle down. It's going to be rather warm inside. Sorry, that's the end of the engine. I do apologise, we didn't recover it, but let's just be thankful we're recovering Jeb. So here we go. We are at a terrain altitude of 2.3, so it's about 200 metres above sea level. So we're not that much above sea level, so this is quite low down. It is night and we are on the opposite side of the planet. So that was a pretty rubbish return. We didn't need any fuel to return, but we wasted all that fuel when we dumped the engine. So that wasn't good. We almost burnt up Jeb and all the experiments, but at 4.9 meters per second we may now survive this rather messy return. So everyone, cross your fingers. We have 340 meters to go until we reach grass level. In the dark I can't tell if we've got much of a slope. I think there might be a slight slope from right to left here, but we've got a nice fat base to land on. No legs, but we're nice fat base. It's not particularly tall anymore. Yeah. So there we go. Altitude above the terrain is now 200 meters. I don't think we'll have much of a shadow, if any, to gauge our descent from moonlight. So we are just going to have to rely on Jeb's cunning piloting skills, which we haven't seen much of so far. But we survived. We have survived. We have 100 meters to go. I'm sure Val is giggling and laughing and rolling about on the floor at this. Jeb is going to have some explaining to do when he gets back. So we've got 40 meters to go. 30. 4.5 meters per second. That should be good. Thump. Definitely a thump, but we are down. Well done, Jeb. You are successfully down. We have survived. We have been on a flyby past the Mun. Val has also taken some science experiments and observed the crew report over the emergency airstrip. So it has been remarkably successful at the end of the day. So with that in mind, I'd like to thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.